last battle had not yet been fought. The gods had not yet risen. Humanity had not drawn its first breath. The sun had never crossed the sky, and the stars had never illuminated the darkness. Yet somehow, the ending was already waiting. That is what makes Norse mythology so remarkable. Most creation stories begin with hope, order, or a divine plan. The Norse story begins with a warning. From the very first moments of existence, the seeds of destruction were already planted. The world would be born, flourish, and eventually perish in fire and chaos. Even the gods themselves would not escape their fate. To the Vikings, the universe was not a perfect creation designed to last forever. It was a living cycle. Everything that came into existence would one day pass away. Kingdoms would rise and fall. Heroes would achieve glory and meet death. Even the mightiest gods would face an end they could neither avoid nor defeat. But that end was not the whole story. For the Norse people, destruction was never the opposite of creation. The two were inseparable. Every ending carried the possibility of a new beginning. Every death made way for new life. The story of the cosmos was not a straight line stretching endlessly into the future. It was a circle that turned endlessly through creation, destruction, and renewal. Before Odin ruled from Asgard, before Thor wielded his hammer against giants, before humanity walked the earth or the world tree spread its branches across the heavens, there was only emptiness. No land existed, no sea existed, no sky existed. There was only a vast and silent void known as Ginnungagap. From that emptiness would emerge giants, gods, monsters, and mortals. Entire worlds would be forged from the body of a slain giant. Great halls would rise beneath golden roofs. Heroes would earn everlasting fame through courage and sacrifice. And far in the future, a prophecy would foretell the day when everything would come crashing down. This is the story of how the Norse imagined the birth of the cosmos. It is a tale of fire and ice, of creation through sacrifice, of gods who knew they were doomed, and of a world whose ending was written into its beginning from the very first moment of existence. Before the first god opened his eyes, before giants walked the earth, and before the stars marked the passage of time, there was nothing that could truly be called a world. No mountains rose from the horizon, no rivers carved paths through valleys. There were no forests, no oceans, and no living creatures. The familiar boundaries between earth and sky did not exist because neither earth nor sky had yet been created. There was only Ginnungagap. To the Norse imagination, Ginnungagap was not merely empty space. It was an endless, silent abyss that stretched beyond measure. It was a place without shape or direction, a vast gulf where creation waited patiently in the darkness. Yet this void was not completely alone. Far to the north lay Niflheim, one of the oldest realms in existence. It was a world of relentless cold, cloaked in darkness and wrapped in endless layers of ice and mist. Frozen rivers flowed through its desolate landscape, carrying venomous waters that hardened into thick sheets of frost. Nothing moved except the drifting fog and the creeping advance of ice. To the south stood its opposite. Muspelheim burned with an intensity that defied imagination. It was a realm of living fire, where rivers of flame flowed across blazing landscapes and sparks filled the air like swarms of glowing stars. The heat was so fierce that nothing born of flesh could survive there. Ancient fire giants guarded its borders, watching over a kingdom that existed long before the world itself. Between these two extremes stretched Ginnungagap. For ages beyond counting, fire and ice remained separated by the great void. Neither side could overcome the other. The frozen breath of Niflheim drifted outward while the burning sparks of Muspelheim surged into the darkness. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the two forces began to move toward one another. Then came the moment that changed everything. The icy rivers flowing from Niflheim reached the edge of the void. At the same time, waves of heat from Muspelheim spread across Ginnungagap. Where the freezing frost met the scorching flames, the ancient ice began to melt. Drops of water formed within the darkness. Those drops were the first sign that creation had begun. The Norse saw this moment as more than a physical event. It was the collision of opposing forces that made existence possible. Neither fire nor ice alone could create life. One brought destruction, the other brought stillness. Only when they met could something entirely new emerge. As the ice continued to melt, the waters gathered and transformed. Within the depths of Ginnungagap, life stirred for the very first time. The universe had not been shaped by a divine command. No god had spoken the world into existence. Instead, creation arose from conflict, from tension, and from the meeting of opposites. Out of the darkness, something immense was beginning to awaken. The age of giants was about to begin. In the space where fire met ice and neither force could hold its shape, something new had already begun to stir. It did not arrive with sound or movement. There was no announcement, no divine command, no cosmic celebration. Instead, existence thickened quietly within the melting edges of Ginnungagap, as if reality itself had begun to coagulate from contradiction. And from that slow transformation, life took its first form. The being that emerged was called Ymir. He did not enter the world the way living things usually do, because there was no world yet to enter. He simply existed as though he had always been waiting inside the void for the right moment to be revealed. His presence filled the emptiness in a way that felt both natural and impossible, like a memory of something that had never happened. Ymir was enormous beyond measure, not merely large in body, but vast in meaning. He was the first structure that chaos had ever produced, the first shape to rise from formlessness. In him, the Norse imagination placed the idea of raw existence before order, before intention, before time had learned how to move forward. And yet, even as he came into being, he was not alone for long. As Ymir rested within Ginnungagap, something else began to form alongside him. From the same melting currents that had given him life, another presence appeared. It was not human, not divine, and not yet fully understood in shape or purpose. This second being was Auðumbla, the great cosmic cow. Where Ymir embodied the unstable force of emergence, Auðumbla represented sustenance. Her milk flowed endlessly, nourishing the first giant and allowing him to exist in a state that resembled sleep more than life. Around her, the void no longer felt entirely empty. Something like balance had entered existence for the first time. But survival in such a place required more than nourishment. It required discovery. Auðumbla fed herself by licking the salty frost that formed in Ginnungagap, and as she did so, something astonishing began to happen. The ice she consumed did not vanish into nothingness. Instead, it slowly revealed what had been hidden inside it. On the first day, the shape of hair appeared. On the second day, a head emerged. By the third day, an entire being stood revealed from within the stone. His name was Buri. Unlike Ymir, Buri did not arise from chaos. He emerged from order concealed within chaos, as though existence itself had been storing him away until the right moment arrived. From Buri would come Bor, and from Bor would come Odin and his brothers, though that future still lay far beyond the horizon of this unfolding beginning. At this point in the story, the cosmos was still small, not in size, but in meaning. Everything that would one day define existence was still concentrated within a single fragile balance of forces: ice, fire, and the strange life that had begun to grow between them. And at the center of it all stood Ymir. Ymir drifted through Ginnungagap without guidance or purpose. There were no stars above him to mark his place, no land beneath him to define direction, and no sky to give the illusion of distance. Time itself had not yet learned how to divide itself into moments. Yet even in this unformed state, something irreversible had occurred. The universe had produced life without meaning, and that meant everything that followed would have to respond to it. For in Norse imagination, creation does not begin with perfection. It begins with imbalance. And Ymir, the first giant, was the embodiment of that truth. He was not a ruler, not a builder, not a destroyer with intent. He was simply the first consequence of existence trying to understand itself. But consequences rarely remain still for long. And somewhere within the silence of Ginnungagap, the shape of conflict was already beginning to form. Time, still in its earliest and most unstable form, moved forward without rhythm or order. Yet even in this undefined passage of existence, continuity began to form. Buri had a son named Bor. Unlike the strange, spontaneous emergence of earlier beings, Bor represented something closer to lineage, something that resembled inheritance, the idea that life could pass forward, not just appear. Bor grew within a world that was still unfinished, surrounded by the remnants of Ymir's vast, drifting form and the ever-present tension of fire and ice pressing against the void. Nothing in his surroundings suggested stability, yet within him something more defined was taking shape. And Bor did not exist alone in shaping what would come next. He formed a union with Bestla, a being born from the lineage of giants. In this connection between opposing origins, order and chaos, lineage and raw force, the foundation of the gods was unknowingly established. From Bor and Bestla came 3 sons, Odin, Vili, Ve. At the moment of their emergence, they did not yet carry the weight of destiny that later stories would place upon them. They were not yet rulers of Asgard or architects of the cosmos. They were simply the next generation in a world that had not yet decided what it wanted to become. But something in them was different from all that had come before. Where Ymir drifted without intention and Buri existed without clear purpose, these 3 brothers carried something closer to awareness, a sense that existence could be shaped rather than merely endured. As they grew within the unfinished fabric of reality, the brothers began to perceive the imbalance around them. They saw the endless body of Ymir stretching across Ginnungagap, vast and ungoverned. They saw the fragments of existence drifting without order, the absence of boundaries, the absence of form. And in that observation, something changed. For the first time in the mythic cycle, existence was no longer just happening. It was being recognized. That recognition carried weight. It implied that things could be different. Not just survived, not just witnessed, but changed. In that moment, the ancestry of the gods ceased to be a simple line of origin. It became a turning point in the story of existence itself. Because from Bor and Bestla's children, the world would not merely continue as it was. It would be reshaped entirely. And the first act of that reshaping was already approaching, hidden just beyond the silence of the void. Nothing in the early universe suggested that peace was ever meant to last. The world had not yet fully settled into its shape, but already it was carrying pressure, silent, growing, and unavoidable. 2 lineages now existed within the same fragile space. On one side stood the giants, born from the first accidental overflow of existence. On the other stood the descendants of Bor, who carried within them something new: intention, vision, and the capacity to reshape reality itself. Between them, tension deepened like a storm forming beneath still waters. And at the center of that tension stood Ymir. He was not a ruler. He did not command armies or build kingdoms. He simply was, the first living consequence of creation, too large, too foundational, too intertwined with the structure of the world to remain untouched. But in a universe where everything is still being formed, even existence itself can become a problem. To Odin and his brothers, the presence of Ymir was no longer something that could be ignored. He was not an enemy in the way later stories would define enemies. Instead, He represented a reality that refused to evolve. The world could not expand around him. It could not stabilize. It could not take shape while its earliest and most chaotic force still filled its center. Ymir's existence anchored everything to an unfinished state. And so the brothers made a decision that would define the very meaning of creation in Norse myth. They would end him. There is a silence that exists before irreversible action. Not empty silence, but weighted silence. The kind that stretches time thin and makes even thought feel like movement. Odin stood within that silence with his brothers beside him. Vili carried resolve. Ve carried form. And Odin carried something more difficult to define. Awareness that what they were about to do would not simply destroy, but transform everything that followed. Ymir fell. And in falling, he became something more than what he had been. The impact of his death did not end existence. It reorganized it. Nothing in the cosmos had ever been deliberately ended before, until this moment. When they moved, it was not chaos that followed, but structure. The act itself was not described as rage or battle in the earliest traditions, but as necessity becoming motion. Blood poured from his body in overwhelming force, too vast to remain contained. It spread outward, filling the void that once surrounded him. What had been empty space became seas, vast and deep, carrying the memory of the first being who had ever lived. His flesh did not vanish. It became land, wide, heavy, and enduring. Mountains rose where his bones settled, forming the first sense of permanence the cosmos had ever known. His skull lifted upward, transformed into the dome of the sky, no longer void, but structure. Even his hair did not disappear. It became forests, spreading across the newly formed earth like traces of something that had once been alive in a more direct way. Everything Ymir had been was redistributed into form. Nothing was wasted. Nothing remained unchanged. The world nearly drowned in him. So much life had been contained in Ymir that when it was released, it became overwhelming. Only one of the giant's descendants survived the flood that followed, escaping with his family upon what remained of the broken world. But even destruction in this moment was not meaningless. It was the final transformation of a being who had once represented pure emergence. Ymir did not simply die. He became the material of existence itself. His end was not an end in the usual sense. It was a conversion, a passage from living chaos into structured reality. From him, the world inherited its shape. What makes this moment different from everything that came before it is not the violence itself, but intention. Before Ymir's death, creation had been accidental. Fire and ice collided. Ice melted. Life emerged. Nothing chose to happen. But here, for the first time, existence was directed. Odin and his brothers did not stumble into creation. They imposed it. The world was no longer something that simply occurred. It was something that could be made. And in that realization, Norse mythology places one of its most important truths. Creation and destruction are not opposites. They are tools of transformation. One cannot exist without the possibility of the other. From Ymir's body came the world, but from his death came something even more significant. The principle that reality could be shaped through sacrifice. Nothing in the cosmos would ever again be untouched by this truth. Every structure, every realm, every future conflict would echo this first act. Even the gods themselves would eventually face the same pattern they initiated here. That order is built from loss, and creation demands cost. The universe had not simply been formed, it had been rewritten. And somewhere beneath the newly formed sky, the memory of the first great sacrifice remained embedded in every stone, every wave, and every breath of wind across the world that now existed. The world did not begin with gentle shaping or careful design. It began with disassembly. What Odin and his brothers had done to Ymir was not simply an act of ending. It was an act of rearrangement. The cosmos, still young and unstable, had no material of its own to build from. There was only the body of the first being, vast beyond comprehension, and the void that still lingered at the edges of existence. And so, from what had once been life, the world was constructed. Not symbolically, literally. Ymir's body became the first foundation of the world. His flesh, heavy with the memory of primordial chaos, was laid out and expanded until it formed the land itself. What had once been soft and living became firm, stretching outward into continents, valleys, and plains that had no prior existence. Nothing about this transformation was gentle. It was total. The giant's form was not preserved. It was repurposed. Every part of him was reassigned a role in the structure of reality. Where his body once moved, there was now stillness. Where his presence once filled the void, there was now ground. The earth was not created from nothing. It was created from everything that had been undone. From Ymir's blood came the oceans. They did not appear as calm waters at first. They surged outward in overwhelming force, filling the lowest spaces of the new world. The seas carried with them a sense of depth that felt almost emotional, as though they retained the memory of what they once were part of. In Norse imagination, water is never neutral. It is always charged with meaning. Here it becomes the visible echo of the first sacrifice, the physical reminder that life and death are not separate states, but continuous transformation. The oceans were not simply placed into the world, they spilled into it. Some parts of Ymir resisted transformation. His bones, dense and unyielding, did not dissolve into the flow of creation. Instead, they remained behind as solid structures, forming the first mountains. These were not shaped by erosion or time. They were placed by necessity. Immovable, enduring, and silent, they became the framework upon which the rest of the world would rest. Where flesh became land and blood became sea, bone became permanence. In this way, the world gained its first sense of stability. Above the newly formed earth, Odin and his brothers lifted Ymir's skull and placed it over the world like a dome. What had once been part of a living being now became the sky itself. It stretched across existence, enclosing everything beneath it. Within its hollow structure, the forces of the cosmos were contained and ordered. This was not simply decoration, it was containment. The sky marked the boundary between the known world and what still remained beyond understanding. In placing the skull above creation, the gods did not erase the void. They contained it. With the world formed, it still remained dark. There was land, sea, and sky, but no rhythm to mark time, no movement across the heavens, no sense that existence was progressing rather than simply existing. So the gods turned their attention to the sparks of Muspelheim, the remnants of fire that still drifted through the cosmos. They gathered these fragments of light and placed them within the sky. The sun was given its path. The moon was set to follow. Stars were scattered across the dome of Ymir's skull like distant memories of fire that had never fully gone out. For the first time, the world began to move through time rather than simply exist within space. Even after everything had been arranged, nothing about the world was truly free of its origin. The land still carried the weight of Ymir's body. The seas still moved with the memory of his blood. The mountains stood as reminders of what could not be broken. The sky itself remained the mark of his final transformation. The world had been built, but not erased. In Norse understanding, this is not accidental. It is essential. Creation does not remove its source. It transforms it, and because of that, every part of existence carries within it a trace of what came before. What Odin and his brothers achieved was more than construction. It was definition. They took a universe that had no shape and gave it boundaries, direction, and order. But in doing so, they also established something deeper, a pattern. That pattern would echo through everything that followed. Life built from sacrifice, order born from destruction, and existence forever tied to the forces it attempted to overcome. The world had been made, but it had not been freed. And somewhere within its newly formed horizon, the consequences of this first act of creation were already beginning to move toward what would eventually become destiny itself. The world, now shaped and structured, did not immediately understand light. It had form, mountains that held their ground, oceans that stretched without end, and a sky that curved above everything like a vast, silent ceiling. But within this new order, there was still a kind of uncertainty. The world existed, yet it had not learned how to change with rhythm. Time was present, but it had not yet learned how to announce itself. That would begin with the sun. Before the first sunrise, there was no distinction between morning and evening. There was only shifting brightness, remnants of the sparks taken from Muspelheim and placed carefully within the skull sky of Ymir. These sparks drifted without direction, their movement still unrefined, as though the sky itself had not yet understood how to guide them. Odin and his brothers saw that creation was incomplete. A world without order and light was still too close to chaos. So they gave intention to the heavens. The sun and the moon were not simply created. They were assigned a purpose. Each was given a path across the sky, a course that would never remain still, never pause, never collapse into randomness again. And with that decision, the universe changed. When the sun first moved into position, the world did not recognize what it was seeing. Light spread across the land slowly at first, touching the highest peaks of the mountains before reaching into the valleys. The oceans, once dark and indistinct, began to shimmer with reflection. Forests, formed from the hair of Ymir, revealed their depth and density for the first time, no longer merging into shadow. Everything that had been formed from the body of the first giant now revealed itself fully. Nothing remained hidden. This was not just illumination, it was revelation. The world was seeing itself for the first time. With the sun's movement established, something equally important came into existence: time. Before this moment, existence had been continuous, without division. There had been no before and after, in any meaningful sense. But as the sun began its journey across the sky and the moon followed its opposing path, the world developed rhythm. Day became distinct from night, light became distinct from shadow, rest became distinct from movement. Time in its earliest form was not measured, it was witnessed. And in witnessing it, the world began to understand change. As the sun and moon continued their paths, something remarkable happened across the newly formed earth. Life responded. Not yet human life, not yet defined or conscious in the way later myths would describe, but a subtle awakening within nature itself. Rivers began to carve more deliberate paths. Winds began to shift with patterns that felt less accidental. Even the ocean seemed to breathe differently under the influence of light and shadow. The world was adjusting, it was learning how to exist under structure. And in doing so, it was becoming more complex than it had ever been in its earliest chaotic state. The sun and moon were not left unguided. In some versions of the myth, they are pursued by forces that seek to consume them, reminders that chaos never fully disappears. Even in a world shaped and ordered, remnants of the old existence still exist at its edges, always moving, always watching. This tension ensures that the sky is never entirely peaceful. The cycle of light is not simply mechanical. It is fragile. It must be maintained, repeated, and preserved against forces that would prefer the return of darkness without structure. Even in its most ordered state, the cosmos carries memory of what it once was. With sunlight came visibility, and with visibility came understanding. The world could now be seen as something separate from those who moved through it. Mountains were no longer just obstacles, they were forms. Oceans were no longer just vastness, they were spaces. The sky was no longer just distance, it was a structure that held meaning. Reality, for the first time, became interpretable. This shift was profound. It meant that existence was no longer only experienced, it could be reflected upon. The first sunrise was not a dramatic explosion or a violent transformation. It was gradual, almost gentle in its arrival, yet its consequences were absolute. With light, the universe gained memory. With cycles, it gained expectation. With time, it gained direction. What Odin and his brothers had begun with the shaping of the world now reached a new stage, the shaping of experience itself. The cosmos was no longer simply formed, it was now aware of its own passage. And somewhere beneath this new rhythm of light and shadow, the next great transformation was already beginning to take shape, waiting for life itself to emerge and give meaning to everything that had been created. The world was complete in form, yet still incomplete in meaning. Mountains stood, oceans moved, the sky held its steady rhythm of light and shadow. Time had learned how to repeat itself, and existence had learned how to be observed. But even with all of this structure in place, something essential was still missing. The world had no one to understand it. It could be seen, but not interpreted. It could be experienced, but not reflected upon. Creation had reached a stage where it could sustain life, yet life itself had not taken its place within it. So Odin and his brothers turned their attention to the earth once more. It is said that they walked along the edge of Midgard, where land met sea. The waves moved gently against the shore, carrying fragments of the world's beginnings in their endless motion. Driftwood lay scattered along the coastline, wood that had once been part of living trees, now stripped of its former identity and shaped by water, wind, and time. It was here that the gods paused, not because they were uncertain, but because they recognized possibility. Within these fallen forms of wood, something awaited transformation. Among the driftwood, two pieces stood out. One carried the shape of a man who had not yet become a man. The other carried the shape of a woman who had not yet become a woman. They were complete in structure, yet empty in essence. Forms without awareness, presence without life. They had been shaped by the world, but not yet claimed by it. In them, the gods saw what had been missing from creation, not structure, but consciousness. Odin stepped forward first. He did not force change, he gave it. Into the silent form of wood, he placed something invisible yet fundamental. Life itself. Breath, awareness, the beginning of motion within stillness. The driftwood no longer remained simply material. It became something that could exist from the inside out. The first human was no longer just shape. He was awake. Vili followed. Where Odin had given life, Vili gave will. The ability to move with intention, to choose direction, to act rather than merely exist. Thought emerged within the newly formed being, not as memory or knowledge, but as awareness of possibility. The human did not only breathe, he began to understand that he could act. V completed the transformation. He gave the final elements that distinguished existence from silence, expression, perception, and the ability to connect inner experience with the outer world. Sight, hearing, speech, each became a bridge between what was within and what was around. The being was no longer silent matter. He could now respond to existence. The man was named Ask. The woman was named Embla. Together, they became the first of humanity. They were not created to rule the world, nor to stand apart from it. They were placed within it, fully immersed in the same forces that shaped mountains, oceans, and sky. Yet unlike all that had come before, they carried awareness. They could witness the world and know that they were witnessing it. Yet humanity was not placed outside the forces that shaped the world. Ask and Embla did not stand apart from the cosmos. They were embedded within it. the same rhythms of light and shadow, the same cycles of time, the same underlying memory of Ymir's transformation all flowed through them. They were part of the world, not above it, and this made them both powerful and vulnerable. As they stood upon the earth for the first time, Ask and Embla did not inherit a perfect creation. They inherited a world built from change, a world shaped from loss, a world that had already proven it could be remade. And in that inheritance lay the foundation of all future stories, of struggle, of growth, of memory, and of fate. For humanity had entered a world that was already in motion, and nothing within it would ever remain still. With humanity now awake within the world, existence entered a new phase. The earth was no longer just a formation shaped from a fallen giant. It had become a living environment, one that could be experienced, interpreted, and inhabited. Yet beneath this growing complexity, something deeper was still required. The cosmos needed structure, not physical structure alone, but a framework that could hold everything together: gods, giants, humans, realms, and the unseen forces that moved between them. The world could not remain a single continuous surface of land, sea, and sky. It needed depth. It needed levels. It needed a center. And from this need, the world tree came into being. Yggdrasil did not appear as an ordinary tree. It was not planted, nor did it grow in any natural sense. It existed as something closer to a principle made visible, a living axis around which reality organized itself. Its form stretched beyond comprehension. Its roots sank into realms no human could reach. Its trunk stood at the center of existence. Its branches extended outward into skies that touched multiple worlds at once. It did not simply occupy space, it defined it. Through Yggdrasil, the universe gained orientation. Above, below, and between were no longer abstract ideas. They became positions within a structure that could be understood. Around Yggdrasil, existence separated into distinct regions, each with its own identity and nature. Asgard rose as the realm of the gods, a place of order, authority, and divine presence. Midgard remained the world of humanity, enclosed and protected, yet always connected to forces beyond its reach. Jotunheim stretched outward as the domain of giants, carrying memory of chaos and ancient existence. Farther still lay realms of ice, fire, shadow, and spirit, each one representing a different condition of being rather than a simple location. These were not countries or continents. They were states of reality. Yggdrasil held them together, not as walls contain a structure, but as meaning contains understanding. Beneath the surface of this vast tree lay forces that shaped its condition. Three beings, known as the Norns, dwelled near its roots. They were not creators in the same way Odin and his brothers had been. They did not build or shape physical matter. Instead, they tended to the flow of existence itself. They shaped what would become, what was becoming, and what had already become. Their presence ensured that time was not random. It was guided. Even the gods were not exempt from this structure. The Norns did not obey divine authority. Rather, they existed alongside it, defining the limits within which all beings moved. In their presence, the universe became aware that it had a direction it could not escape. Through Yggdrasil, everything became linked. The gods were no longer isolated in Asgard. Humans were no longer separate in Midgard. Giants were no longer distant forces of chaos. Every realm touched another, even when separated by immense distance or difference in nature. Reality was no longer fragmented. It was interconnected. This meant that no action could exist in complete isolation. What happened in one realm would eventually ripple into another. A decision made in the heavens could echo in the world of humans. A disturbance among giants could affect the stability of gods. The universe had become relational, yet even this grand design carried vulnerability. Because Yggdrasil was alive, It was not immune to harm. Its existence implied not only connection, but dependency. If the tree weakened, the structure of reality would weaken with it. If its roots were damaged, entire realms could be affected. Even the gods, who now ruled from within this structure, were bound by it. They did not stand outside the system they had helped bring into being. They stood within it. With Yggdrasil at its center, existence gained its final dimension: depth. The world was no longer just a surface where events unfolded. It was a layered reality, extending upward into divine realms and downward into unseen foundations. Between these layers moved forces, beings and destinies that could cross boundaries but never escape the structure entirely. Humanity now lived in a world that was not only visible, but vast in meaning, and the gods themselves existed within a framework they could not fully control. For a moment, existence appeared stable. The realms were arranged. The tree was rooted. Humanity had awakened. The gods held their place in the structure of things. But beneath this apparent balance, the same truth that had shaped everything before still remained. Nothing in this cosmos is final. Not creation, not structure, not even the world tree that holds reality together. And somewhere in the deeper silence between realms, the first signs of imbalance were already beginning to form. With the world formed, humanity awakened, and the structure of reality anchored by Yggdrasil, existence entered a rare and delicate phase. It appeared for a time as if balance had been achieved. The gods had shaped chaos into form. The giants had been pushed to the outer boundaries of the world. Humanity lived within Midgard, sheltered yet aware. The realms were separated, yet connected through the world tree. Time moved in cycles that could be understood. Light and darkness followed predictable paths across the sky. From within Asgard, it seemed as though creation had finally settled into its rightful shape. This was the age that would later be remembered as the Golden Age of the Gods. The halls of the gods rose bright and unshaken, reflecting a sense of permanence that the earlier universe had never known. Odin, now established as the All-Father, observed the structure of existence with a kind of quiet authority. Thor, his strength made manifest, guarded the boundaries of order against the lingering threats of chaos. Other gods took their places within the system, each representing an aspect of stability, protection, or understanding. For a time, it seemed as though nothing could disrupt this arrangement. The cosmos, once born from collision and sacrifice, now appeared governed by clarity. Even as the gods ruled, the memory of what had been used to build the world remained present beneath everything. Ymir's body had not disappeared. It had been transformed. The giants had not been destroyed. They had been displaced. And the deeper structure of fate, maintained by forces beyond even the gods, continued to shape what could and could not occur. Beneath the visible order of the gods lay something far more absolute. The Norns, who tended the roots of Yggdrasil, continued their work without interruption. They did not act against the gods, nor did they serve them. They simply maintained the flow of what must become, what is becoming, and what has already become. And although the gods ruled in apparent stability, subtle disturbances began to appear at the edges of the world. In distant realms, movement stirred among the giants who had not been destroyed but scattered. In the depths of the cosmos, forces older than order itself continued to exist, waiting for conditions that would allow them to act. Even within Asgard, knowledge carried by Odin hinted at truths that could not be fully contained without consequence. The structure of the world, though strong, was not unchanging. It was held together by balance, and balance is always vulnerable to shift. The Golden Age was not a failure. It was a necessary stage in the life of the cosmos. It allowed humanity to grow, allowed the gods to establish identity, and allowed the world tree to stabilize its hold on the 9 realms. But it also created expectation, the sense that order was permanent, that structure was final, that chaos had been overcome. That expectation would eventually become the foundation of collapse. Because in a universe born from fire and ice, nothing built from balance can remain untouched by imbalance forever. As the gods stood at the height of their influence, something deeper than sight or knowledge began to shift. Fate, already written into the roots of Yggdrasil, continued its slow movement forward. The world, now stable in appearance, remained vulnerable beneath its surface. And in the far distance of existence, beyond even the reach of divine perception, the conditions for change were already forming. The Golden Age did not end yet, but it had already begun to move toward its end. And in the silence that followed this realization, the cosmos prepared, without resistance, for the first true omen of decline. The world did not collapse all at once. It never does. Instead, it begins with subtle distortions, small disruptions in places that once felt permanent, like fractures forming beneath polished stone. The golden age of the gods, so carefully constructed and so confidently maintained, did not shatter in a single moment. It began to weaken in ways that were almost impossible to name. At first, nothing appeared wrong, but in the oldest myths, that is always how endings begin. The first unmistakable sign did not come from war or invasion, but from loss. Baldur, the radiant god associated with light and purity, began to be troubled by visions of his own end. Dreams that felt too real, too precise, began to follow him through the halls of Asgard. What should have been impossible, the death of a god protected by all things, began to feel inevitable. The gods responded as order always responds to uncertainty, with action meant to preserve stability. Every force in existence was asked to promise Baldur's safety. Fire, metal, stone, water, and disease all swore that they would not harm him. For a moment, it seemed as though fate itself had been negotiated away. And yet something remained outside that agreement. Something small, something easily overlooked, something that did not belong to the same category as everything else. Not everything in existence had been bound by oath. In the margins of reality, where significance seemed too small to matter, there existed a plant, mistletoe. It was overlooked, ignored, and dismissed as harmless. It had not been asked to swear protection because no one considered it capable of harm. And in a world governed by structure and assumption, that absence became decisive. When the moment came, deception entered where certainty had ruled. The death of Baldur was not contained within Asgard. It did not remain a private tragedy among the gods. It spread outward through the structure of Yggdrasil itself, touching every realm connected to it. Midgard felt it as a sudden dimming of light, as though the world had briefly forgotten how to shine fully. In Asgard, grief became more than emotion. It became disruption, a weakening of certainty that had once seemed unbreakable. Even in distant realms where gods rarely looked, something in the balance of existence had changed. This was no ordinary death. It was a breach in the idea of permanence. From this moment onward, the Golden Age could no longer be sustained in its previous form. If a god protected by every force in existence could still fall, then no agreement was absolute. No structure was final. No promise could fully hold against the deeper currents that shaped reality. What had once been considered stability now revealed itself as temporary alignment. And alignment, no matter how strong, can always shift. After Baldur's death, the world did not immediately descend into chaos. Instead, it entered a more unsettling condition, uncertainty with memory. The gods continued to rule, but differently. Their confidence carried a fracture that could not be repaired by strength or wisdom. Even Odin, who sought knowledge beyond all limits, could not retrieve what had been lost. The sense that fate was not just present, but actively moving, became harder to ignore. Across the realms, older forces began to stir more visibly. In the outer regions of existence, where order had always been thinner, movement increased. The giants, long pushed away from the center of creation, began to shift in ways that suggested coordination rather than randomness. In the depths of mythic memory, prophecies that had once been spoken in whispers began to feel less like warnings and more like descriptions. The structure of the world was no longer simply holding, it was reacting. For the gods, this was the beginning of understanding something they had never truly faced before. Not danger, not opposition, but conclusion. The realization that even a perfectly structured cosmos does not remain fixed forever, that every system built from transformation carries within it the possibility of further transformation, that even Yggdrasil, vast and enduring, exists within conditions that can shift beyond its control. The Golden Age had not been destroyed, it had revealed its limits. Nothing dramatic marked this transition. No final war, no sudden collapse, only a growing awareness that the world had already begun to move in a direction that could not be reversed. What had once been a stable cosmos now carried the subtle pressure of inevitability, and in that pressure, the shape of the final age began to form, quietly, steadily, and without resistance. The beginning of the end had already begun. The end did not arrive as a surprise. For a long time it had existed in fragments, visions, warnings, fractured prophecies carried through time like echoes of something already decided. But prophecy in the Norse cosmos is not uncertain. It is not speculation. It is description, and when the final conditions aligned, those descriptions became reality. The age of stability, already weakened by loss and imbalance, finally reached its limit, and the world responded. It began with the cold. Not the ordinary winter that comes and passes, but something deeper, an unbroken descent of frost that stretched across Midgard and beyond. The sun still moved, the moon still followed, but their presence offered less comfort with each passing cycle. Light no longer restored warmth. Time no longer guaranteed renewal. This was the Fimbul winter, the great winter that precedes collapse. Humanity, still living within the structure of the world, felt the change first. Food became scarce. Trust weakened. Bonds that had held communities together under the rhythm of earlier ages began to fracture. Survival replaced stability as the governing principle of existence. It was not chaos yet, but it was the return of instability. As the world grew colder, so too did the relationships between its inhabitants. Among humans, conflict replaced cooperation. Among realms, distance became tension. Even within Asgard, the unity of the gods began to loosen under the pressure of inevitability. What had once been held together by structure now required effort to maintain. And effort, in a cosmos already aligned toward ending, was no longer enough. The illusion of permanence dissolved completely. Yggdrasil, the world tree, continued to stand, but it no longer felt untouched. Its roots, once stable, now carried strain from forces pressing inward from all sides. Its branches, connecting realms that were never meant to fully separate, transmitted unrest across the structure of existence. Every realm felt the pressure of every other realm more intensely than before. What had once been harmony through connection now became vulnerability through connection. And in that vulnerability, movement began. The giants, long displaced to the outer regions of existence, began to advance. This was not invasion. It was return. Forces that had once been pushed to the edges of creation now moved toward the center, responding to conditions that had finally aligned with their nature. At the same time, older bindings weakened. Things that had been contained, forces, beings and influences that had remained restrained since the earliest shaping of the world, began to break free. The cosmos, once carefully arranged, was beginning to unmake its own arrangements. Across the 9 realms, movement converged. Odin gathered knowledge one last time, seeking understanding in a world that no longer offered clarity. Thor prepared for conflict that could no longer be avoided through negotiation. Loki, whose presence had always existed at the edge of order, moved toward his final role in the unfolding pattern of events. Everything that had been separated by structure now began to align toward confrontation. Not because it was chosen, but because it was inevitable. At the appointed moment, all tensions that had been building since the first emergence of existence reached their convergence. The forces of order and the forces of chaos no longer remained in distant balance. They met directly. The gods, the giants, the beings of fire and shadow, and the remnants of all that had been restrained since the beginning of creation came together in a single unfolding event. The battle that followed was not simply conflict. Odin faced the wolf that had been destined for him since the earliest prophecies of existence. Thor met the serpent, whose presence had long circled the boundaries of the world. Loki fulfilled the path that had been embedded within him since the earliest fractures between order and instability. One by one, the central figures of the cosmos reached their conclusion. As the final struggles ended, the world itself began to collapse under the weight of what it had become. Fire and ice returned, not as beginnings this time, but as endings completing their cycle. The sky, once formed from a giant's skull, no longer held its shape. The land, once formed from sacrifice, returned to instability. Even the separation between realms dissolved, as structure itself gave way to continuity. Everything that had been built was unbuilt. Everything that had been formed was returned to its origins. From the first collision of fire and ice, from the first emergence of Ymir, from the first act of sacrifice, the direction of existence had always contained this moment within it. Nothing had been wasted. Nothing had been accidental. Every stage had led here. The end was not an event imposed upon the world. It was something the world had been moving toward since its first breath. And when it finally arrived, it did so not as destruction alone, but as completion. After the fire faded, there was silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of completion, the kind that follows the end of something vast enough to reshape existence itself. The old world, with its gods, its realms, its struggles, and its carefully held order, was gone. Not erased in denial, but transformed beyond recognition. What remained was not ruin. It was possibility. Where land had once stood, water now stretched outward in every direction. The ocean did not feel new. It felt ancient, as if it had always been waiting beneath the surface of things, patiently holding space for what would come after. The remnants of the old world no longer held their former meanings. Mountains had dissolved into memory. The sky no longer carried the structure it once did. Even the boundaries between realms had disappeared, leaving only a vast openness where distinction had once existed. And yet, within this openness, something stirred. Not everything was lost. From the remnants of the old order, a small number of beings remained, not as rulers of a broken system, but as witnesses to its transformation. Among them were those who had endured the final collapse and those who had been carried forward by the deeper continuity of existence itself. They did not return to rebuild what had been lost. They returned to understand what had changed. From the sea, a new land began to rise. It did not emerge with the weight of sacrifice that had shaped the first world. There was no giant beneath it, no body forming its structure. Instead, it rose as if responding to a quieter principle, one less violent, more patient, yet still rooted in the same cycles that had governed all things since the beginning. The world was not being repeated, it was being renewed. Above this emerging land, light returned. The sun and moon, though changed by everything that had come before, resumed their presence in the sky, but their movement now felt different. less like duty imposed from above and more like continuation without resistance. Time did not restart. It flowed onward, carrying memory without repeating the same shape. The cosmos had not forgotten what it had been, but it no longer existed within it. Humanity returned to the world, not as replacement for what had come before, but as continuation of awareness itself. Those who stepped into this new landscape carried the memory of endings within them. They understood, without needing explanation, that existence is not permanent and that even worlds are subject to transformation. Yet they also carried something else: the knowledge that after destruction, life does not cease. It begins again. Among the survivors, one presence stood apart. Baldur, the god whose death had marked the turning point of the Old Age, returned from what had seemed final. His presence in the new world was not a reversal of fate, but an expression of it. In a reality that had passed through total transformation, even what had ended could reappear in a different form. He did not return to the old Asgard. He returned to a world without it. The new world did not restore the 9 realms as they had once been. Instead, reality existed in a quieter, less divided form. The separation between worlds had dissolved, leaving behind a more unified existence. Not simpler, but less rigid. Less defined by hierarchy, more defined by continuity. Yggdrasil, as it had once been known, no longer held the same meaning. Its structure was no longer needed to bind what had already become whole. In the end, the story does not close. It continues. The world rises again not because it is restored, but because existence itself does not remain still. From fire and ice, from sacrifice and collapse, from gods and giants and mortals alike, something persists that cannot be fully named. Not order, not chaos, but becoming. And in that becoming, the story of the Norse cosmos quietly begins again.